The first time humanity said please, the galaxy ignored them. The second time, the galaxy laughed. The third time, the galaxy sent warship. No one in the Galactic Council remembered when humans had first appeared. They hadn't arrived in glory. They hadn't arrived with fleets or weapons or demands. They arrived with paperwork. A single battered diplomatic vessel, hull scarred by micrometeors and bad decisions, dropped out of faster-than-light drift on the edge of Council space. Its drives wheezed like an old smoker climbing stairs. The transmission it sent was simple. We request recognition. We request trade. We request peaceful coexistence. The Council filed it under low-priority nuisance species. That had been 87 standard cycles ago. Commander Elias Rook remembered every second of it. He remembered because he'd been there, not in person. No human had ever been allowed inside the Council chambers. But he'd watched the transmission logs during training. Mandatory viewing. A lesson in humiliation. He could still see the alien delegate. The tall, elegant Thalrathi with their silver skin and permanent expressions of bored superiority. The insectoid Kesari clicking in amusement. The massive, stone-skinned Vrul, who didn't laugh, but whose silence was worse. They are primitive, one Thalrathi had said. They split atoms for power. Barbaric, another agreed. Harmless, concluded the Council. Harmless. Elias sat now in the command chair of the UNSV graveyard shift, staring at a tactical display that painted the stars in cold blue wire frames. His ship floated at the edge of human-controlled space. Officially, he was on border patrol. Unofficially, he was waiting. Waiting for the galaxy to make another mistake. Behind him, his executive officer, Lieutenant Mara Cade, leaned against a console, sipping something that pretended to be coffee. "You ever think about it?" she asked. "About what?" "How long they've been poking us with sticks." Elias didn't answer immediately. Because he did think about it. Every day. It had started small. Trade sanctions. Human goods labeled biologically risky. Restricted travel zones. Inspection fleets that boarded human vessels under the pretense of safety compliance. Then came the disappearances. Mining colonies gone silent. Freighters vanishing along Council-controlled routes. Always blamed on pirates. Pirates that only attacked humans. The Council expressed condolences. Filed reports. Promised investigations. Nothing changed. Because nothing needed to. Humans were weak. Outnumbered. Outgunned. Alone. Or so the galaxy believed. The tactical display chimed softly. Elias leaned forward. A contact had appeared at the edge of sensor range. One ship. Council signature. Thalrathi. Mara saw it too. "That's not a patrol vessel." "No," Elias said quietly. "It wasn't. Patrol ships traveled in pairs. This one was alone. And it was moving deep into human space. Unauthorized. Provocative. Intentional. A message." Mara set her cup down. "Orders." Elias hesitated. Because this moment had been coming for years. Humanity had spent decades building quietly. Smiling politely. Saying please. All while preparing for the day they would stop. The comm panel blinked. Incoming transmission. The Thalrathi ship didn't wait for permission. A tall, silver-skinned alien appeared on the screen, its black eyes cold and dismissive. "This region is under Council inspection," it said. "Power down your vessel and prepare for boarding." Mara let out a quiet laugh. "They're serious." Elias didn't laugh. He studied the alien's face. No fear. No hesitation. No doubt. Because to the Thalrathi, humans were still harmless. Elias leaned forward. "This is human-controlled space," he said calmly. "You are not authorized to enter." The alien's expression didn't change. "Your authorization is irrelevant." Elias felt something old and familiar stir in his chest. Anger. Not the hot, reckless kind. The cold kind. The patient kind. The kind that waits. "You have 2 minutes to comply," the alien continued. "Or you will be disabled." Mara muttered, "They brought one ship." Yes, Elias said. One ship. Because they thought one would be enough. The alien leaned slightly closer to its camera. You are an unrecognized military force. Your species exists at the Council's discretion. Discretion. Permission. Ownership. Elias reached down and pressed a single, unmarked switch beneath his console. Deep inside the graveyard shift, something woke up. Something that had never been used. Something that had never existed before. The alien was still talking. You will power down now. Elias cut the transmission. Mara raised an eyebrow. That's new. Yes, Elias said. The tactical display changed. New symbols appeared. Not human. Not council. Unknown. Except Elias knew exactly what they were. He'd been waiting his entire career to see them activate. The Thaurathy ship hadn't noticed yet. It continued drifting forward with arrogant certainty. Still believing in a galaxy where humans asked permission. Mara looked at the display. Her voice was quiet. Sir, are those? Yes. She stared at him. They're going to lose their minds. Elias leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt calm. Because humanity was done asking. The Thaurathy ship suddenly slowed. Its engines flickered. Its shields faltered. The alien vessel froze in space like an insect caught in amber. The comm panel lit up again. The alien's face returned. Gone was the boredom. Gone was the superiority. Now there was confusion. What have you done? Elias smiled faintly. The galaxy had always believed humans were behind. Primitive. Predictable. Harmless. They had never considered the one thing humans did best. Waiting. We said please, Elias replied quietly. He paused. Then added, you should have listened. Far beyond the Thaurathy ship, in the darkness between stars, massive shapes began to move. Ancient. Silent. Hungry. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, the hunters weren't alien. They were human. And the galaxy had just rung the dinner bell. The Thaurathy vessel was frozen, its sensors overwhelmed by a signal it couldn't even begin to interpret. Every readout flickered between coherent data and static. Its captain's voice trembled, something no Thaurathy had done in over 3 centuries. Explain, what is happening? Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Humanity didn't negotiate anymore. They acted. The first wave hit without warning. Drones. Hundreds of them, each the size of a small moon, unfolded from the darkness like a swarm of metallic locusts. They were not armed in the conventional sense. They didn't carry energy weapons or torpedoes. They carried ideas, algorithms, worms, viruses, the kind that burrowed into navigation, into shields, into the very thought processes of the Council ship. The Thaurathy vessel shuddered violently as its engines misfired. Shields flared and collapsed. Panic erupted in the alien bridge, manifesting as a soundless, clicking frenzy of movements and gestures, an alien hysteria that only humans could induce. Mara leaned over the console, whispering, I thought they said we weren't ready for this. Elias smirked. They were counting on polite humans. That ended 87 cycles ago. Council fleets began to respond, but too slowly. Coordination broke down within seconds. Orders were meaningless when ships couldn't tell friend from foe, when their own systems were rewriting themselves, when the enemy wasn't in front of them, it was everywhere. And then the humans struck physically. Not in ships that blared with energy or mass drivers. Not in swarms of missiles. No, the graveyard shift released something much simpler. Small, almost primitive warships, each crewed by humans who smiled as if they were going fishing. They tore through the Council lines with surgical precision. Hulls designed for stealth, systems engineered to anticipate alien tactics, weapons that exploited every weakness the Council had ignored for decades. Every strike was personal, deliberate. Every maneuver screamed, we've been underestimated. The Thaurathy flagship tried to retreat. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers barked orders, but nothing worked. Every evasive maneuver was countered before it could be executed. The ship shuddered, then exploded into a cascade of brilliant white light. Elias didn't celebrate. He watched. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries. Now they were paying for it in real time. Mara muttered, half in awe, half in horror, "They thought one ship could intimidate us?" "Yes," Elias said. "And one ship could have, if we'd let them. But humans never let threats go unpunished. Not anymore." Across the void, deep inside Council space, a fleet of Kesari dreadnoughts attempted to flank human lines. They had numbers, intimidation, overwhelming firepower. But numbers counted for little when every sensor was feeding false data, when the humans knew their every move before they made it, when the humans were already inside the enemy's strategy before the first shots were fired. The dreadnoughts didn't last a minute. They disintegrated under coordinated strikes that seemed almost psychic in their precision. Humans didn't fight like any other species. They fought like the universe owed them something, and the universe had just stopped pretending it did. Somewhere, an elderly council official muttered, "It can't be these are children." They weren't children. They were hunters. And every human hunter carried centuries of patient, silent, simmering fury. Elias tapped a console. "Send the boarding teams." Mara froze. "You want us to?" "Exactly. The human ships didn't just destroy, they occupied. They didn't just punish, they humiliated." Boarding parties struck with terrifying efficiency. Alien officers were captured alive, interrogated in ways that revealed just how little the Council understood human ingenuity. Psychological traps, moral dilemmas, whispered threats about things humans could and would do. The galaxy began to panic. Communication channels lit up with confusion. The Council sent more fleet. Entire sectors of space were thrown into chaos. And all the while, Elias and Mara moved like shadows among shadows, human ingenuity twisting and contorting the battlefield to their advantage. A transmission came through, hissing with static, the alien voice trembling. Why are you doing this?" Elias smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Because you stopped listening." The graveyard shift pulsed with silent power. Around them, fleets of humans, small, quiet, terrifyingly patient, moved like predators awakened from a long slumber. The galaxy had assumed humans needed orders. They assumed humans needed leadership. They assumed humans would stop asking for permission and go quietly. They had been wrong. Somewhere in the distance, the first human casualty, a soldier whose bravery had cost her life, was honored by her squad. But even her death was not in vain. Every loss had been calculated. Every sacrifice had been anticipated. Every action now screamed a message. Do not underestimate us. Ever again. The Thaurathi fleet had shattered. Kesari dreadnoughts lay in pieces. Vrul ships drifted silently, abandoned, systems fried. And in the center of it all, the humans were barely breaking a sweat. Mara leaned over Elias's shoulder, eyes wide. "They're going to call this a massacre." Elias smiled darkly. "No. They're going to call it a warning. Because humanity had learned the one truth the galaxy never expected. Sometimes saying, 'Fine, I'll do it myself,' isn't stubbornness. It's strategy. It's survival. And it's terrifying." The galaxy had never known fear like this. It wasn't the firepower. It wasn't the drones, the algorithms, the swarming tactics. It wasn't even the boarding teams. Those things were terrifying, but expected. Calculable. No, this was different. This was human unpredictability, the kind of chaos that came from centuries of being underestimated. Elias leaned back in his command chair, letting the hum of the graveyard shift seep into his bones. He could feel it. The galaxy had stopped breathing. Somewhere out there, the Thaurathi, the Kesari, the Vrul, they weren't planning. They weren't retaliating. They were surviving. And survival was never their strong suit. Mara tapped the console. "Sir, there's a council delegation heading this way. Entire convoy. They're bringing reinforcements." Elias didn't flinch. "Let them come. They think we're desperate. They think we'll break. They've spent 87 cycles proving they're predictable. That was their mistake. The first wave arrived like a storm of silver and black, ships bristling with weapons, engines burning with the arrogance of invincibility. At the bridge of the graveyard shift, Elias's fingers danced across controls as if performing an elaborate symphony. The Council ships fired first. Aimed to intimidate, to suppress, to remind humanity of its place in the galaxy. They had miscalculated again. Instead of attacking head-on, human vessels scattered in 1,000 micro-movements, slipping between volleys with grace and precision. The first Council cruiser fired, and a single human drone, smaller than a Council fighter, slipped inside its shields and detonated in the engine bay. One cruiser gone. The rest paused, unsure if it had been a fluke. It wasn't. A human voice came over the comms, dry, calm, dripping with dark humor. You'll need bigger numbers next time. Or smaller egos. The galaxy froze. Aliens had never heard humans speak like this in battle. Never with wit. Never with mockery while destroying entire fleet. The second cruiser tried to respond. It fired blindly, hoping to overwhelm. It failed spectacularly. Within seconds it was surrounded, disabled, and boarded. The aliens inside were terrified, not of death, but of what humanity would do if they survived. Mara leaned toward Elias, whispering, This isn't war. This is art. Art. Elias chuckled darkly. No. This is the result of decades of being ignored. This is patience turned into teeth. As the battle raged, Elias activated the next phase. It wasn't brute force. It was theater. A series of human cargo ships, empty, seemingly harmless, suddenly transformed into launch platforms. Thousands of small, autonomous fighters deployed at once, each programmed with alien combat tactics the humans had collected over the years. Every move of the Council ships was anticipated before it happened. Every weak point exploited. Every system hacked. The Council's communication channels filled with screams, orders, chaos. Their fleets had never encountered an enemy that could outthink them at every level. They had never faced humans. Then came the coup de grace. Elias activated a signal, a beacon, and across the void dozens of human battleships, long rumored, long feared, long underestimated, jumped from faster-than-light drift. Ships the galaxy didn't know existed. Ghosts. Legends. Myth. They appeared in formation, massive, black, terrifying in their simplicity, and began to annihilate the remaining alien vessels with ruthless efficiency. The Thaurathi captain, still alive, screamed over the comms. Stop. You can't. Watch us, Elias said simply. And humanity did. Then, in the midst of the carnage, came the twist. Elias had predicted the Council's final gambit, an attempt to negotiate, a surrender, a feigned alliance, a diplomatic trap. A Council envoy appeared on the human holofeed, pleading, begging, offering concessions, technology, entire sectors of space. Elias smiled. Mara tilted her head. Sir, she asked. We take nothing, he said. We leave them with memories. Because humans didn't need tribute. They didn't need medals or territory. They needed the galaxy to understand something it had never grasped. Humans were dangerous because they were patient. They were dangerous because they were underestimated. They were dangerous because when pushed far enough, they didn't ask for permission anymore. By the time the smoke cleared, hundreds of Council vessels were destroyed or disabled. Entire alien fleets had been turned into debris and ghost ship. Communications were paralyzed. The galaxy had been shown, in vivid, terrifying color, exactly what happened when humans said, Fine. I'll do it myself. Mara exhaled slowly. Do you think they'll ever trust us again? Elias shook his head, a faint grin on his lips. Trust? No. Fear? Absolutely. From the shadows of faster-than-light drift, human ships disappeared as silently as they had arrived. The graveyard shift was the last to leave, cruising away with the calm authority of predators who had cleaned house and decided it was time for tea. Somewhere in the remnants of the shattered council fleets, alien historians would later write that humanity was reckless, chaotic, suicidal. They would get the first part right. The second, they would never understand. Elias leaned back, letting the silence wash over him. Mara touched his shoulder. They'll rebuild, she said. They always do, he replied. But they'll never forget. And for the first time in human history, the galaxy knew exactly what that meant. The galaxy woke to silence. Not the calm of peace, but the kind of quiet that followed a storm, when survivors counted losses, when fleets that had ruled sectors for centuries lay in pieces, drifting like tombstones in the void. Elias watched it all from the graveyard shift, alone in the bridge except for Mara, who leaned casually against the console, sipping her coffee as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Do they even know what hit them? She asked. Elias didn't answer immediately. He had spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. He knew the galaxy thought of humans as predictable, polite, harmless, fragile. None of it was true. They'll know, he said quietly. In every message, in every report, in every system they reboot. The council was in chaos. Delegates screamed over comms, demanding explanations, blame, revenge. The Kasari attempted to organize resistance, but their dreadnoughts had been rendered useless, their crews terrified and confused. The Vrol withdrew entirely, their pride shattered. The Thalrathi? Their silver arrogance had turned into pleading. And yet, humans did not gloat. They did not occupy. They did not demand tribute. They left warnings. A single transmission was broadcast across council space. We asked. You ignored. We acted. Let this be the last time you mistake patience for weakness. Then the humans vanished, leaving nothing but a trail of wreckage and a new, uneasy respect, or fear, that stretched across the galaxy. Elias turned to Mara. Do you ever wonder if they'll try again? Mara shrugged. Eventually. But they'll think twice. Good, Elias said. Because next time, we won't be as patient. And humanity's next move would not be polite. Not subtle. Not patient. Deep in human territory, colonies once considered fringe, weak, or expendable began mobilizing. Engineers, soldiers, civilians, all had been trained in secret for decades. Every child who had grown up under the council's sneers had learned one lesson perfectly. Patience was a weapon, and when wielded correctly, it was devastating. Back in the void, survivors of the destroyed fleets reported strange anomalies. Systems rebooted to find tactical codes they had never seen. Communications carried subtle threats disguised as innocuous messages. The humans had not only defeated their enemies, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. Mara smirked. They'll be talking about this for 1,000 cycles. Historians will call it the Great Human Reckoning. Elias laughed softly. They'll get part of it right, but the part they won't understand? They'll never see us coming the next time. Not in their history books, not in their strategies, not in their nightmares. Somewhere, across the galaxy, a young Thalrathi officer whispered to a companion, trembling, they were clever, brutal, unrelenting. I don't think we've seen the last of them. No. The galaxy hadn't. Because humans didn't fight for glory. They didn't fight for honor. They fought because they had been underestimated, dismissed, and insulted for centuries. And now, the galaxy knew. Underestimate humanity at your own peril. The graveyard shift slipped silently back into human space. Elias and Mara stood side by side, staring at the stars. Do you ever think about going home? Mara asked. Elias shook his head. Home is where the next mistake waits. And humanity? We don't wait politely anymore. A faint smile touched Mara's lips. Yeah, she whispered. And somewhere, deep in the council's shattered archives, a single phrase echoed endlessly across subspace. Fine. They'll do it themselves. It was a warning. It was a promise. It was humanity. The galaxy would never forget.